It was late, the kind of quiet night where most people just want to get home. But when those red and blue lights appeared in my mirror, I knew this wouldn't be routine. The officer didn't see a Navy veteran. He saw someone he could push around. It's just another black woman alone on the road. What he didn't expect was calm, quiet resistance, and the truth that would follow him into a courtroom. If you feel drawn in, make sure to subscribe, because tomorrow we have a story that will leave you speechless. It was just past 11 when I saw the lights, red and blue flickering in my rearview mirror, gaining fast. I'd been on the road for a while, headed back toward Birmingham after visiting a friend downstate. The night was quiet. A soft jazz tune played low through the speakers, and the rain had left a sheen on the pavement that shimmered under the streetlights. I wasn't speeding. I wasn't in a rush, just tired. When the patrol car pulled up behind me, my stomach tightened, not from fear exactly, but from recognition. I knew this drill too well. I signaled, changed lanes, and eased onto the shoulder, put the car in park, took a breath, kept my hands on the wheel. Military protocol had drilled that instinct into me long ago. Stay still, stay visible, stay calm. The officer took his time getting out. I watched him approach through my side mirror, stocky build, firm gait, flashlight in one hand, the other resting on his belt like it was a badge of authority, not a tool of service. His badge caught the light. Briggs. He didn't greet me. No good evening, ma'am. Just a flat practice command. License and registration. I nodded once and reached slowly for the glove compartment. Was I speeding, officer? I asked, keeping my voice even. He didn't answer right away. Just took my papers, holding them like they were an inconvenience. Then he said, "Taillights out." That caught me off guard. "That can't be right," I said. "They were checked recently." He narrowed his eyes at me in the mirror. "You arguing with me?" And there it was, that shift. The moment when the routine traffic stop takes a different turn, where it stops being about safety and starts being about control. I've seen it before. Overseas in war zones, in classrooms, in courtrooms, and sadly on streets like this one. "I'm not arguing," I replied calmly. "Just saying I'm surprised, but I'll have it checked." He didn't acknowledge it, just said, "Step out of the car." No explanation, no further reason. I paused, looked down the road, no traffic, no witnesses, just the hum of the engine and the weight of the moment pressing in. "May I ask why?" I said. He smirked. "Because I said so." I stared at my hands for a second. My breath was slow, controlled. I could feel that part of me, the part trained to de-escalate, to survive, to endure, rise to the surface. I unbuckled my seatbelt and stepped out into the night air. It was cooler than I expected. I wasn't in uniform, but I carried every ounce of it in my posture. I wasn't looking for a fight, but I wouldn't be bullied either. And somewhere deep down, I already knew. This wasn't going to end with a warning. He told me to turn around and put my hands on the car. I paused. Not out of defiance, but out of habit. A habit of asking for clarity, for cause, for basic decency. I looked at him squarely. "For what reason?" I asked. He took a step closer. His smirk vanished, replaced by something colder. Annoyance, maybe even anger. "Are you resisting?" I didn't move. Number, I'm asking a question. And there it was again. That line so easily crossed. A request for explanation suddenly interpreted as resistance. It didn't matter how calmly I said it. It didn't matter how still I stood. All that mattered was that I didn't immediately obey. He reached for his radio and muttered something about a non-compliant driver. Then louder, "Turn around." I could feel my pulse pick up, but I didn't let it show. I've led high-stakes missions overseas. I've been under fire in foreign deserts. I've handled volatile interrogations with foreign nationals in unstable territories. But this was home. This was Alabama. And somehow it felt more dangerous than any war zone I'd seen. "I need you to understand something," I told him, my voice low but steady. "I know exactly what I'm allowed to do, and I know exactly what you're not allowed to do." His jaw tensed. "You're under arrest," he snapped, lunging for my wrist. "For what?" He was already reaching for the cuffs. "Obstructing an officer." I had a choice: push back or play it smart and live to fight it properly. I turned slowly and placed my hands on the roof of my car. The metal was cool. My shoulders were steady. I would not give him the reaction he wanted. He yanked my arms behind my back, wrenching the cuffs too tight on purpose. I could feel the sharp bite of metal against my skin as he shoved me toward the patrol car. "You don't know what you're doing," I murmured. He chuckled, shoving me into the back seat. "Lady, I know exactly what I'm doing." But he didn't. Not even close. The door slammed shut. The air inside the cruiser was stale, and the hard plastic seat dug into my back. I sat still, focused on my breath. In, outside, just like I'd practiced for years in training. Control the breath, control the body, control the body, control the mind. He got into the driver's seat, whistling like he was proud of himself. "Most people just keep their mouths shut," he said. "Most officers don't arrest people for asking questions," I replied. That made him laugh. "You must really think you're somebody." I looked at him through the glass. "I don't think, I know." That shut him up for a moment. He tried to regain ground with a sneer. "Military, huh? You think that means something here?" I didn't answer. We reached the station, a squat building with harsh lights and peeling paint. Inside, the holding area smelled of old coffee and institutional neglect. He uncuffed me just long enough for booking, fingerprints, mugshot, the whole dehumanizing routine, then clamped the cuffs back on without loosening them. The officers behind the desk barely looked up. Just another black woman in cuffs. No questions, no concern. He shoved me toward the cell. I caught myself before I stumbled. "You think you're smart," he muttered. "I don't have to think." He hated that. I could see it in the way his jaw tightened. He locked the cell, tapped the bars with his fingers, and walked away. I sat on the cold bench, rolled my shoulders, and tried not to focus on the burning in my wrists. I'd spent nights in tougher places. In Kabul, I once bunked in a makeshift shelter under mortar threat. In training, I'd gone 2 days without sleep. I'd been tested. But what hit hardest here wasn't the discomfort. It was the insult, the indignity of being treated like a criminal in the very country I had served. Outside the cell, I heard footsteps. He returned, leaned in, smug as ever. "You know, if you just played along..." I let a slow smile form at the edge of my lips. "I'm exactly where I need to be." That shook him. Just a flicker. But I saw it. He turned away when a younger officer approached with a clipboard and said there was a call for him. I caught only pieces of the conversation. Something about a lawyer, someone from higher up, questions about why I was being held. Briggs came back to my cell, jaw tight, fist clenched. "What the hell did you do?" I met his gaze, steady and calm. "I didn't do anything, but people talk, and some of us have friends in very high places." He didn't answer, just turned on his heel and stormed down the hallway. I leaned back on the bench, finally allowing myself a breath. Let him sweat, because this fight was never about taillights, and it wasn't over, not yet. The courthouse was colder than I remembered, not in temperature, but in atmosphere. A kind of formal stillness that clung to the marble walls and polished floors. I'd been in places like this before, where decisions were made not by emotion, but by order, by law, by presentation. That suited me just fine. I stood beside my attorney, Carla Whitman, at the defendant's table. She was sharp, deliberate in her movements, calm in her voice, not one for small talk. I appreciated that. The less said, the better. We already had everything we needed. Across the aisle, Sergeant Briggs sat in uniform. Still upright, still squared shoulders. But something had changed. His confidence was thinner now, worn like a suit a size too big. He glanced in my direction but didn't hold my gaze. Good. The courtroom filled slowly. Just a few reporters, some court staff, a couple of curious onlookers who had heard whispers about the case. But the energy shifted the moment Judge Kirkland entered. An older man, weary-eyed, no nonsense. He adjusted his glasses, looked at the files in front of him, and got straight to the point. "All right," he said, "let's get to it." The prosecutor stood, addressing the court with a voice both firm and measured. "Your Honor, we have strong evidence that Lieutenant Commander Renee Dawson was unlawfully detained during a traffic stop conducted without probable cause. He paused, then added, "Furthermore, there's a troubling pattern of misconduct connected to the arresting officer, Sergeant Daniel Briggs." A quiet murmur moved through the courtroom. I remained still. I didn't look at Briggs, but I could feel his discomfort start to take shape. The judge peered over his glasses. "Sergeant Briggs, care to explain?" Briggs cleared his throat and leaned forward. "Your Honor, the defendant was uncooperative during a routine stop. Before he could continue, the prosecutor lifted a document. With respect, Your Honor, Lieutenant Commander Dawson's record shows a distinguished career, graduate of the Naval Academy, multiple commendations, 0 disciplinary actions, no outstanding citations, no criminal history." He set the document down with a calm thud. "Are we really to believe this person posed such a threat that she had to be arrested over a broken taillight?" Briggs's mouth opened, then closed. He had no answer. The silence said enough. The prosecutor pressed on. "We've also reviewed body cam footage of the arrest. The officer's tone, the escalation, and the unnecessary use of restraints raised serious concerns." Judge Kirkland leaned back in his chair. "Let's see it." A screen lowered at the front of the courtroom. The lights dimmed slightly. I didn't turn to watch. I didn't need to. I'd already lived every second. I heard my voice in the footage, calm and composed. I heard his, clipped and authoritative, rising too quickly. I heard the phrase that still rang in my ears. "Because I said so." The moment played out. My arrest, his smugness, my silence. The courtroom remained quiet even after the screen went dark. The judge leaned forward, elbows on the bench, fingers steepled. "Sergeant Briggs," he said, voice slow and deliberate, "you violated protocol, conducted an unlawful arrest, and failed to report key details. The charges against Lieutenant Commander Dawson are dismissed." The gavel struck the bench like a full stop at the end of a long sentence. "And I am ordering an internal review into your conduct and your arrest history," the judge added. "I suggest you prepare accordingly." A sharp breath cut through the air. Briggs this time. His face flushed, his jaw tight. He looked stunned, like someone had just told him gravity was optional. I stood, gathered my things quietly. No celebration, no smile, just peace. I didn't need to win loudly. I just needed the truth to speak for itself. And it had. Briggs locked eyes with me as I turned. No words passed between us. None were needed. He knew exactly what had just happened, what he had tried to do, and what I had just undone. He stood too quickly, storming out of the courtroom with heavy, angry steps. They echoed down the corridor like the sound of a man falling from a pedestal only he believed he belonged on. I walked with Carla through the hallway. A few reporters waited outside, but I kept moving. This wasn't about publicity, it was about restoration. Justice isn't always swift. It's not always satisfying. But when it lands, quietly, cleanly, it's something you can feel deep in your bones. Not triumph, just alignment. Like the world, even if only for a moment, is tilted back into balance. Back in the parking lot, I stood for a second beside my car, the same one I had been pulled from just days before. I looked at the rear lights. Still working, of course. The symbolism wasn't lost on me. This had never been about a taillight. It had been about power, about arrogance, about a man in a uniform thinking he could get away with it, because so many others like him had. But this time he didn't, and I didn't back down. Not because I wanted revenge, but because I wanted the record to show that I knew my worth. And that next time someone like Briggs tries to write a story with intimidation and assumption, there just might be a woman like me who rewrites the ending. With the truth. I didn't hear about Briggs's suspension until the next morning. I was sitting in a small cafe across from the courthouse, stirring a cup of coffee while the city woke up around me. Rain tapped gently at the window. The headlines had already started rolling in. Lieutenant Commander wrongfully arrested, officer under investigation. But I wasn't reading them for validation. I already knew what had happened. I had lived it. It was Carla, my attorney, who texted me first. "He's been pulled off active duty. Might be more coming." I read it twice, then sipped my coffee. Not surprise, not joy, just quiet confirmation that the system, for once, didn't look the other way. Later, I learned what happened behind closed doors. Briggs had barely made it out of the courtroom before the department called him in. No badge-polishing pleasantries, no pats on the back, just a sharp summons from Chief Eldon Baker, the kind of officer whose presence could silence an entire hallway. Baker had served for over 30 years. He'd seen it all, or thought he had. But even he hadn't expected that one of his own would so carelessly arrest a decorated Navy officer over a phantom taillight. The moment Briggs walked into his office, the tone shifted. "What the hell were you thinking?" he asked. Briggs, true to form, deflected. "I was doing my job." Baker tossed the case file on the desk. "That's not what it looks like from here." Then came the body cam footage, the arrest history, the repeated pattern, too many traffic stops, too many black drivers, too few valid reasons. It wasn't just a bad decision. It was a pattern, a profile, and the department couldn't afford to carry the weight of it any longer. "You didn't even know who you were arresting," Baker told him. Briggs is still trying to hold on, said something about me being disrespectful, about how I acted like the rules didn't apply. And then, I'm told, Baker said the words that finally broke through. "Questioning you isn't a crime, but what you did might be." And just like that, the weight shifted. For years, Briggs had walked with the confidence of someone who believed rules were for other people. That day, he learned otherwise. Suspended, investigated, exposed. I heard that Internal Affairs was reviewing his entire history, pulling reports, rewatching footage, digging through every case where someone had been pulled over and never understood why. That kind of scrutiny doesn't come often, but when it does, it's thorough. From my cafe window, I watch people pass by, mothers holding hands with children, students hurrying to class, workers on their break. None of them knew what had unfolded inside that courtroom. None of them knew what it had cost me to stay calm, to stay measured, to stay professional when every fiber of me wanted to shout. But I did it, not for headlines, not for applause, but because I understood that what I represented was larger than me. Briggs's downfall didn't bring me pleasure, but it brought me peace, because for once, someone in uniform was held accountable for what they did in it. Justice, when it comes, doesn't need to roar. It can arrive in silence, in firm decisions, in the heavy sound of a door closing behind a man who thought he could never be touched. He had wanted me in that jail cell to remind me of my place, but in the end, it was the courtroom and the truth that reminded him of his. When I stepped outside, the air smelled like wet pavement in new beginnings. I wasn't smiling, but I felt light. Not because I'd won, but because I hadn't let him take anything from me that I hadn't already reclaimed. People like Briggs don't expect you to push back. They expect your fear, your silence, your submission. But that's not what he got from me. What he got was discipline, control, truth, and the unmistakable realization that some women don't just wear uniforms, they embody what they stand for. He wanted to test my limits. Instead, he revealed his own. It's easy to think that once the case is closed, the story's over. That justice delivered in a courtroom is the end of the chapter. But I know better. What happened to me wasn't just about one officer, one night, or one bad decision. It was about a system that allowed someone like Briggs to wear a badge without ever learning what it truly meant to serve. It was about the quiet fear too many people carry when they see red and blue lights in the mirror, wondering if they'll be seen as a citizen or a threat. The truth is, I had something most people don't. I had rank, I had training, I had people in my corner with the resources to speak loud enough for the system to listen. But what if I hadn't? That question has stayed with me more than anything else. I think about the ones who didn't have lawyers who answered the phone in the middle of the night, who didn't have cameras, who didn't have the language, the platform, or the patience to stay calm when everything about the moment felt like a trap. And that's why I don't see this as a personal victory. I see it as a responsibility. Because I know there are young black men and women growing up right now, smart, kind, full of potential, who still live in a world where a uniform can mean protection or persecution, depending on who's wearing it. I didn't speak out because I wanted attention. I did it because silence, in the face of injustice, becomes complicity. And I've served too long, fought too hard, and seen too much to let that happen on my watch. So no, I'm not interested in being a headline. I'm interested in being part of the change that ensures what happened to me doesn't keep happening to people who won't be as lucky. If you're reading this and it moved you, let it move you toward something. Ask a question, challenge an assumption, stand up quietly or boldly when you see power misused. Because justice doesn't begin in courtrooms. It begins in the everyday decisions we make about what we tolerate and what we don't. As for me, I'm still standing, still serving, just in a different uniform now. And I know exactly who I am. Some stories don't end when the last sentence is read. They echo deeply quietly, reminding us that change doesn't always arrive with a bang. Sometimes it walks in, steady and composed, wearing the face of someone like Renee Dawson. Hers is one of those incredible stories that stirs something in all of us, not just because of what she endured, but because of how she responded, with dignity, with calm, with strength that never needed to shout to be heard. In a world that often silences Black women, her voice rose, not through rage, but through resilience. And in doing so, she became part of something larger, a wave of justice that begins with one stand and spreads through conversations, accountability, and quiet acts of courage. These are the kinds of narrated stories we need more of, not just to be moved, but to be moved to act. Because for every Renee, there are thousands whose unraveled fates go unseen. This justice story may have found its resolution, but its message lives on. So ask yourself, what would you do if this happened to your daughter, your sister, your friend? What would you want the world to learn from it? If Renee's strength inspired you, share her story. Talk about it at dinner. Bring it up in places where these conversations rarely happen. Because the more we tell these emotional stories, the more we challenge what's been allowed to continue for too long. Let this be more than a story you read. Let it be one you carry,